sure that we're started. Okay, great. All right. So the first tool that we want to use is the Addressing the Stress tool. This is one of the tools that I introduced last week on our call, and I don't think we got to expand on it for the sake of time. But I want to revisit it. So go ahead, if you have your notes and your paper from last week, you can go ahead and pull that out. If you don't, then go ahead and pull out a piece of paper and something to write with. This addressing the stress wheel is set up if you draw a circle and then you draw a line across going each direction and then diagonal, if you will, and label each box with what you see here on the right. Outlet for frustration, prayer and meditation, sleep, diet and hydration, and so forth. As I mentioned last week, these are all proven and research-based tools that have been proven to support people with minimizing the impact of stress and anxiety. And so what you want to do is look at each one of these areas and you want to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest, I'm not doing anything as it relates to this. 10 is I'm doing this all the time, and so forth. So I'm going to give you a second to draw the wheel or to fill in your ratings for each one of those areas in the Address the Stress wheel. For those that's ready to move on, once you've rated your each one of those areas, you're going to go into your circle as you see here, and I put a visual to help us out this week. For example, if you said in exercise that you're about a 5, that means that you do exercise, but not on a consistent basis. It's hit or miss, so you rated yourself a 5. You're going to go to that piece of the pie and you're going to draw a line about halfway through the pie to be reflective of a 5. Say that when you think about outlets for frustration, say that you rated yourself a 4, you'll just go right beneath the halfway mark and then draw a line across the pie for that area. So do that for each one of the pieces that address stress. So prayer and meditation, whatever you rated it, and then draw a line. When you're ready for the next set of instructions, or you're ready to move on, you can either let me know through chat or you can jump off mute and let me know. Okay, excellent. So as you're looking at this, all of these, as I mentioned, are all tools that can be used to minimize the impact of stress. They're the expectation that you will be 10 in all of these areas, that's not realistic. And the expectation that you won't have any stress or any anxiety, that's not realistic as well. But we do know that these pieces will impact the amount of stress and how you manage your stress. So over the next week, what I want you to do is I want you to take this and I want you to explore how can I move each one of these areas up just by one notch? Meaning, if exercise is at a 5, what is one thing that you can do to move that up to a 6? And if outlets for frustration, what can you do to move that up, if it's a 4, to a 5? And what you will find is the more that you implement these different areas in your life, it will minimize the level of stress that you feel overall. Again, it's not going to take it away, but it will lessen the impact of stress. So I really want you to think about this. And some of these have more power than others. For example, we do know that for sleep, there's a high impact on the minimization of stress when you get a regular regimen of amount of sleep. Also, too, prayer and meditation. That has been proven. There's a lot of research out on mindfulness, having a mindfulness moment. That's part of the meditation. That's taking a moment and disconnecting and just connecting into your mental things. So if you're having those mindful moments, or some people have a gratitude jar. They start off the morning before they do anything. They sit down and they write down something that they're thankful for. That's a form of meditation. And that will help minimize the impact of stress as well as anxiety. And so you will be able to you should see a decrease in your stress as you implement those things. And we can revisit those later. And I'm sure Taylor will be adding some pieces to that. One of the things that I want to focus on today is perspective. How you approach stress in your life and the perspective that you take has a large impact on how you can manage those stressful moments and those anxiety, those moments where you have anxiety. So how this perspective chart works is you have in the upper right-hand corner a starting situation. So in this particular case, we know that everyone is dealing with the same situation of coronavirus and all the impacts across the board as it relates to that. Now, because this is so unfamiliar, we have to go back and we have to connect to something that is familiar or a time or point where we felt very stressful. All of us have a default perspective or approach when we get to stressful moments. Sometimes it's shutting down, sometimes it's disconnecting from everyone around us, but we all have a default perspective as it relates. Maybe it's frustration. That is our default perspective. So when we're looking to reframe that perspective, we have to first look at the situation from an emotional, neutral way. So, like, for example, when we think about the coronavirus and everything that's happening in society, job layoffs, furloughs, as we mentioned last time, all these different parts of it, what is a way that we can not take away from the drastic impact of it, but we can describe it in an emotional, neutral way? So I'm going to give you a second to think about that. What is an emotional, neutral way that you can describe our current situation? And when you have something, feel free to jump off of mute and share what you have. Or do I need to call on someone?
I'll speak.
Okay, go ahead, Stacy. Tell us what you got.
So I think to look at this in an emotional neutral way is to first acknowledge that we didn't have anything to do with it in terms of creating it or bringing it about. So you don't ascribe anything or blame to yourself
Mm,
in the process. So it helps you work through the process. We are having consequences behind it, but you have to first, take yourself out of the situation saying you didn't personally bring it on.
right. That's good. So really looking at it, saying, you know what? This is a bad situation, but it's not my fault. So now, how can I address it? I can default, and it's just the human nature. It's to say, I'm mad. This shouldn't be happening. I don't have, my paycheck, this, that, and the other. That's our default perspective because we're always going to look at it from a exaggerated point of view, if you will. But to take the personal aspect of it and realize it's not my fault. So that's good. Thank you, Stacey. Anyone else? Think about what about from the what is a way that we can explain the impact of uh, social social distancing and the emotional aspect of it, because the default perspective is I can't go out and be with my friends, or the perspective, or I can't go, I want to be on the patio drinking a margarita, especially in this time and season. So what would be a emotional neutral way to describe this situation from that aspect? And you can place it in chat if you don't want to necessarily speak.
One way could possibly be looking at it the way that it was previously stated, understanding that this isn't a circumstance that you created, but also beginning to possibly identify, even though this isn't a circumstance you created, how can you look at this from a different perspective, as in maybe, okay, no, I'm not able to hang out with my friends right now, but in the meantime, how can I prepare myself so that the next time I see them, maybe you're able to build upon something and not necessarily hold all the negativity that's trying to be thrusted in your face.
Right. Good. Thank you, Taylor. That's excellent. So it's to approach it from a neutral standpoint would to be said, you know what, I can't be without my friends, um, but this may be an opportunity to do something different. So you're looking at it from the starting situation, which is the actual problem. You first describe it in a neutral way, which is, you know what, it's not my fault. Let me see if if there's some other way to look at this situation, which is a neutral emotional aspect of it. The second part of it is, now what perspective do I want to put in place of what my default perspective, which would be, is I'm frustrated, I'm mad, I want to go out, hang out, I can't hang out. So what would be another perspective that I can take? And it could be, this is a good opportunity to develop some skills. This is a good opportunity to learn something. This is a good opportunity to, maybe you're not happy with your job. Maybe this is a good opportunity to explore new job opportunities and so forth. So I want you to look at this chart, and you can take any notes from it or draw on your paper. So as we leave, as you're thinking about this week, is what perspectives do you have right now? And what is, first, describe it in an emotional neutral way. Take the negativity, take the extremities out of it, and explain in a neutral way. As you heard, this is not my fault. This is the reality of what I'm in, and there has to be, or there's probably some benefits that I can get from it. That's an emotional neutral way. Then, what perspective? What do I want in this moment, or how can I grow in this moment? And then from there, action steps based off of what you put in your mind based off your new perspective. Like I saw this as an opportunity, and just to share, I saw this as an opportunity to say, oh, let me get all the things that I want to do as it relates to building my business, as well as getting some things done. For example, in my job, there's a lot of certifications that I needed to do that I didn't have time to do. So instead of being frustrated, I said, this is an opportunity to really focus and get those certifications done that's required, but also that I need to take care of and get done too. So you see how my starting situation could be, oh, this is here. Looked at it from a neutral standpoint, gained a fresh perspective, and then put an action step in place. And I have to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, this has probably been the most productive time that I've had in the last 2 years. And it's all about shifting perspective. Even from the standpoint, I move my office around. Sometimes little things can be shift perspective, where in my office, I was facing the door, the entrance to my office, and I shifted my desk. Now my viewpoint is outside my window, so I'm seeing all the birds who's out and can breathe now, and so forth, because there's no one out in the streets polluting up the air and so forth. So shifting perspective, shifting ideas, shifting positions can play a large part in how we manage our anxiety and stress. Before we move on, think about that. How is anything jump out at you as we went through that and as we looked at this chart? Anyone wants to share their thinking around this chart and this perspective?
Looking at things from another perspective, how there's a lot of spaces on here where it gives you the opportunity to not just look at the default perspective, but also looking at it from 3 different perspectives, along with creating an action plan based on, as they put, the chosen perspective. So it gives you an ability to look at things from a different perspective, not just what you would automatically experience or feel as a default. And then it gives you an opportunity to really think outside of your normal cognitive functioning and come up with solution-focused resolution to what the problem would be. So I think that's actually it's really interesting, actually.
Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate it.
I also want to add that it also, I don't know if you said call it a concern, but sometimes we are in a reactive mode to these kinds of situations. And then when it blows over, we go back to business as usual. And so, one of my concerns about developing these perspectives and habits now is that we see that there is a paradigm shift that actually is needed. Like, don't just go back to what was just because the pandemic situation has blown over, but make this an additive part of your life so that in any situation that it comes up, we are able to manage stress and anxiety a little better. I know this probably felt like it was sprung on us, but then that's life. It happens, and this is not the only stressful situation that we've had in life. So, my concern for my friends and myself is, not going back or making a repeat of what was and not dealing with it in a healthy perspective going forward.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Stacey. I really appreciate you pointing that out, and thank you for sharing. Is these tools can be used in any aspect of your life, in any time where you're feeling stress and anxiety come up, and even people that don't necessarily, stress is not the thing that bothers them, or anxiety is not a position that's normal for them, will experience times in their life that they will experience stress and anxiety. The second piece to that is one of our weeks, we're going to be talking about what do we want our tomorrow or our future to look like after we get past this. Because part of the stress and the anxiety that come around with this unknown pandemic is, what does tomorrow hold? And believe it or not, we have more power in shaping what tomorrow looks like than what we believe or what we know to be the case. And so we will be spending some time in one of our weeks talking about how do we take not only the skills that we learned, but what do we want for the future and tomorrow to put us in a better place. Good deal. All right. So what we're going to do is move, unless anyone else want to share or add comments to what already has been shared so far. Okay. If not, then let's move on, and I'm going to introduce our guest who's been adding a lot of input to our session already. But Taylor Daniel is a associate marriage and family therapist here in Georgia, and one of the things she works in education. Well, works with students primarily, I believe, and you can correct me on any part of this, Taylor. But one of the things that she does is she helps students and families through therapy work through some of the things that they go through on a daily basis. So, Taylor, real quickly before I let you jump into your presentation, kind of give us an idea of what you do on a day in, day out basis.
A lot. Okay, so as you said, I am a marriage and family therapist, and so what that means is I work with individuals, groups, families, youth, adults, as well as teens and tweens. So I do go into the school system currently. I am at about 10 different schools where I do in-house therapy with the students in the school setting, where I'm also coordinating with the staff as well, so that I'm able to support them and being able to better support the students so that they're not necessarily red flagging them or writing them off as just a bad student. I'm helping them understand that with behaviors, there's usually some semblance of mental health services that are needed because there may be a lot of stressors occurring in the home setting. And if they are unable to express themselves, then of course the way that a child is going to express that they're angry is by usually acting out. So I do one-on-one therapy with the student in school setting. I also do skill building, and I also make it a point to work with the students' teachers to provide them with the skills that I'm also teaching the student as well. And then I do family therapy as well, because the whole point is I can work with the student all day. However, if the family is not receptive to utilizing some of these skills or actually understanding where the individual is coming from, then no progress is really going to be able to be made because the family is still in the dark and they're not willing to utilize these supports that are set in place that are going to not just support them, but also assist them in supporting the student as well.
Real quickly, one of the things, Taylor, is that in this time, there's been increased reports of people having domestic violence because of the stress and anxiety of being on top of each other. Mm-hmm. So, tell me, what have you seen with that, and if anything?
I haven't seen an increase in domestic violence. I do know that it is definitely occurring, and it is linked to the fact that domestic violence is going to happen regardless of anything. However, now that, as you said, we are essentially on top of each other, there's some individuals are not able to go to work right now. The kids are not able to go to school right now because everything has been closed down. So now it's a matter of everybody is at home. And so that break that you used to get in between is no longer present. Therefore, the individual who has a short temper or who has a severe lack of impulse control, hence the reason why they engage in physical violence as opposed to communication, they don't have that break that would usually be allotted. Not saying that it helps, because it doesn't help that much. However, it's exacerbated at this point in time because your child is here and maybe they want to play all the time or they want to talk to you, which is a normal thing, but you may be accustomed to being at work where you have 8 hours away from them, and when you come home, maybe mom or whoever is able to kind of shuffle them into a room to be able to give you that space, but that no longer exists right now because you're not at work, that other individual may not necessarily be at work, and now the child is at home as well. So that also adds another dynamic where you have no space, your frustration, of course, is mounting, and then on top of it, that other added stress could be linked to the fact that there's a lack of income as well, because you may not be able to go to work as well. So I know that it is definitely mounting. There is a serious increase of it, hence the reason why I still urge anybody who is dealing with that to please contact the supportive service so that they can get you out during this time.
Okay, that's good to know.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So, what Taylor? They're saying that you're getting a little feedback, and I think it may be you may try turning off your camera to free up some bandwidth. Okay. And
Is that helping?
yes, that helps. Okay. So, just guide me through your presentation. I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you go through, and as if you have questions, as we're going through, you can type them in chat, and we'll stop frequently to check in to see if there's any questions.
Okay. Okay, well, hello all. I hope everybody is staying physically as well as mentally healthy. As previously stated, my name is Taylor Daniel, and I am a marriage and family therapist, and I've been invited to discuss certain coping techniques that you can utilize to be able to assist you in reducing any anxiety, frustration, or stress that you may be experiencing during this time, during this unprecedented time. So before I begin, I just want to explain that during this time, as we said, this is an unprecedented time. And so if you're experiencing an increase of stress, anxiety, possibly even anger or frustration, that really is very incredibly normal. This is the time, as we can't say this enough, this is an unprecedented time. This is something that nobody was expecting to come across. And as a result, we are having to learn a new normal. And with a new normal comes change, and sometimes change isn't always easy to deal with, especially when some of the change is really uncomfortable. So it's a very normal thing to experience some of these heightened emotions, but even though we know that this is normal, it's not necessarily a healthy thing. So what I want to do is give you some simple techniques that you can utilize. They're simple but very effective, so that you can utilize them so that you'll have the ability to cope in a healthier manner. So Mark, you can. One more? Right there. Okay. So the first coping skill I'm going to talk about is called diaphragmatic breathing, also known as deep breathing. Some of the benefits are just simply, it gives you a reduction of stress and anxiety. It increases the oxygen that's within your body, and it also has the ability to decrease your pain levels as well. The way that the diaphragmatic breathing works is you engage in the deep breathing, and what it does is it places an exceptional amount of oxygen within your body. During the time of you being frustrated or anxious or even angry, we all know that our heart rate does not stay normal. It usually speeds up, which is not a healthy thing for our body. So as you engage in the deep breathing, what happens is your heartbeat and your breath ends up becoming synced to where they're going at the same rate. When you do the deep breathing, you're doing slow, long, deep breaths. So that causes your heart to slow down. And as your heart and your breathing come in sync with one another, that sends messages to your brain where it tells itself, okay, I can release the endorphins. And so once you feel that release of endorphins, that's when you experience that calmness coming over your body. So there actually is a science to it. As I said before, it's a very simple concept, which is why some individuals look over it, as well as some individuals you might find that you actually engage in this organically. Next slide. You can go to the next one. Okay, yes. Wait, no. One more back. Okay, yes. So the diaphragmatic breathing techniques, there's a lot of different ones. However, I gave you a standard one, and then I'm also going to go over a more structured one. So the standard one is very simple. What you're going to do is you're breathing through your nose, placing one hand on your chest and the other one on your diaphragm. And so you're going to breathe through your nose for at least 3 seconds, and then you're going to hold that. After you hold it, you're going to breathe out, keeping your hand on your chest and one on your diaphragm, and you're going to feel your diaphragm expand. The whole reason why you want your hands placed there is because you want to be able to feel your heart rate slowing down, and you want to feel the air going in and out of your body. Another one that is actually quite simple, but it's a bit more structured, is the 4-7-8 breathing technique, where again, you're placing your hands in the same areas, one on your chest, one on your diaphragm. But before you start this, you're going to empty the air out of your lungs. After you do that, you're going to breathe in slowly through your nose for 4 seconds. You're going to hold it for 7 seconds, and then you're going to breathe out of your mouth, making a whoosh sound for 8 seconds. And I know hearing that sound, it may make you laugh, it may feel weird, but there's a reason as to why you're doing it. So you're going to do that. And you do that at least 4 times. And the reason why I suggest that you do this technique at least 3 to 4 times is because the first time, you're probably going to just be getting accustomed to it. But the second, the third, and the fourth time is when you're going to feel that release of endorphins, where you're going to feel the anxiety, the stress, and even the frustration melting away out of your body, because you're going to be filling your body with oxygen, and it's just not possible for your body to be full of oxygen and then also maintain an anxious state as well.
Hey, Taylor, before you move on, I just think it's important. We use this exercise as well in my training that I do for life coaching. And one thing I want to make sure that people understand is, definitely during this time, the first piece is having a heightened sense of awareness of when you're feeling those moments. And this can be definitely when we're talking about social distancing and so forth, is really coming in tune to yourself and knowing, okay, I'm having a moment. I'm feeling the pressure. I'm feeling the stress of distance or whatever the case may be. And putting yourself in a quiet place and saying, okay, let me address this. Will you still have those same feelings when you get through? Yes, but you'll be able to manage it a lot better after you go through some of these techniques.
Right, right. It's not a matter of, in some situations, you may, after completing some of these techniques, you may be like, okay, the anxiety has melted away, I'm fine. But in some cases, like you said, you definitely may not have all of it, but it's going to put you in a way where you're able to cope with it in a healthier manner, where you're able to continue to function and it's not going to bother you so much.
And this is good as well. I'm thinking about, those of you that have companions, those of you that's in relationships or have kids that's at home with you. It's easy for those moments to get really tight and feel those moments press on you real quickly. And so knowing how to separate and doing these quickly before you explode or before you get into those other areas. So I think that's good. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next one is guided imagery, which is actually one of my more favorites. The benefits, again, is it reduces anxiety, it assists in reducing stress, it can decrease blood pressure, it can strengthen your immune system, as well as, again, it can reduce pain, and it also has the ability to improve the attention and your concentration as well. So the science behind this is that this has to do with dealing with the right side of your brain, and the right side of your brain deals with feelings as well as processing and things like that. So your left side of your brain deals in more of logic. So because this technique is centered for the right brain, it really has a good effect on things. So you can go to the next slide. I'm going to give you some examples of it. Okay, so one of the simple guided imageries is my safe place. This can be used for adults, this can be used for kids as well. And it's really simple. So the whole concept behind my safe place is you're identifying a positive memory. It can be a great memory that you had as a child, an adult, whichever one, or it can be a safe place that you yourself have created, either in your imagination, you just created a safe place where it's in your mind and nobody else can get to it, or it can even be a beach that you visited and that's just your favorite place. But you're going to identify this place that just brings you a lot of peace, and you're going to identify this as your safe place. Once you have this place identified, what you're going to do is, and you can be sitting down, laying down, whichever one, you're going to close your eyes and you're going to take yourself to that scene. You're going to imagine that scene. So for the example, I'll identify a beach. So you're going to go to that beach and you're going to place yourself on that beach. And during this time, again, there's a theme here. You're going to be taking deep, soothing breaths to also root yourself in this imagery. And the reason as to why this assists in decreasing anxiety, stress, frustration, and all that is because, one, again, you're filling your body with oxygen, so therefore we know if it's full of oxygen, anxiety cannot dwell there as well. But the other part is you're taking your mind off of the negative things that are occurring around you, and you're centering your mind on something that is positive and enjoyable for you. Therefore, that's also going to release the endorphins as well.
You know, Taylor, I really think that this is probably a good tool to even think about as it relates to the perspective exercise.
Yeah, definitely.
Because one of the things I'm thinking about is I have friends that's very social, that's very like to communicate and like to be out, and they're having a hard time with even settling in their spirits enough to be comfortable in the place. But if you take it from the perspective exercise and then use this imagery and think about those times, or shift the perspective to, instead of saying what I'm not or what I'm missing out on, but more so it's connecting to images and memories of when you were with your friends, when you were with those people that you love, and when you were with those things, and connecting to those memories to bring you back into that peaceful place. And then using that, which we'll talk about if we have time, things that you can do on the back end to bring that connection back together.
Definitely, definitely. I have a client right now where that is her safe place. Her thinking about hanging out with her friends, the different places that they went before all this happened. And so when she utilizes this tool, when I ask her, okay, well, where did you go? Where was your safe place? That's her answer. My safe place was me and my friends being at the mall.
Wow, this is really good. Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Because I'm thinking about even how I support people that's lost someone or who's passed. Is we can't get rid of that feeling, but if we allow ourselves to say, you know what, they're not feeling any emotions, they're not feeling any connections, and how I honor them best is by remembering those good parts and those times that we shared together, and tapping into that memory that we have of them. It allows us to have that safe place, and that while it doesn't take away that pain, it does allow us to draw from that to ease some of it in that moment. Great, thank you.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so this one, I apologize. I realized that I cut out a whole sense. So it's supposed to be the 5 senses guided imagery, but this one is essentially the same as the other. However, you're going to be dealing with senses. So this one is going to ground you a little bit more. You're doing the same thing with identifying what your safe place is, whether it's realistic or imaginary. You're going to close your eyes, but on this one, instead of you just doing your deep breath, you're going to identify 5 things you can hear. Then you're going to identify 4 things you can see, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, and then 1 thing that you can touch. And all of these things are going to be centered around where you are in your safe place. So again, the example I used was a beach. So on the beach, I'm going to identify 5 things I could hear, 4 things I could see, 3 things I could smell, 2 things that I could taste, and 1 thing that I could touch. And what this does is it just grounds you even more in having a different perspective of things, while also filling yourself with oxygen as well, because as you dive deeper into this, because you're utilizing your senses, you're really going to be able to ground yourself. And at that point, those negative thought processes that were going on at that point are going to continue to melt away because you're focused on something else. So you're really successfully restructuring your cognition.
Good. That's good.
Yeah. So next slide. Okay, so the next concept is called progressive muscle relaxation, also known as PMR for short, because I know it's a long name. But this one also provides a lot of the same benefits with reducing blood pressure, reducing stress, reducing anxiety. It can decrease the tenseness that you may hold in your muscle, and then it can also reduce fatigue as well. So the way that this is going is it not only can be used as a technique, but it's also an early warning sign, because with progressive muscle relaxation, it's assisting you in being able to become aware of where you're holding all of your stress, because it's going to show you what muscles are tense. And as you complete this intervention, when you realize what muscles are tense, at the end of it, you're going to know, okay, I know that I hold most of my stress in my neck and my shoulders. So then, since you know that, you'll be able to better protect against that or better cope. So the tip that I put at the bottom is when your body is physically relaxed and full of oxygen, you cannot feel anxiety. So progressive muscle relaxation really helps in reinforcing that. So the next slide.
Yeah, and just FYI, Taylor, we have about 5 minutes, so I don't know if there's anything that you want to.
This is the last one. And then everything else, if you want, you could just post it and individuals can review it, because there's about 3 others that I put on there just to give some extra stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a full body progressive muscle relaxation technique. Now, a lot of times I only do a modified one where I have the client only do this with 2 parts of their body. But what you do with this technique is, for instance, if we do a modified one, let's say that we use our hands and our arms, what you can do is you're going to put as much tension in your hands and your arms as possible. You're going to hold that for 15 seconds, and then you're going to release it. You're going to do this at least 2 times. And once you've done this 2 times, one, you're going to be able to become aware of if you were tense before and where you held that stress at, but then you're also going to feel a really strong feeling of being relaxed in those muscles that you did this with. There's a longer one, which is the one that's before you, where you can do forehead, jaw, the neck and the shoulders, arms and hands. You even do your glutes, as funny as that sounds. And then you also do your legs and your feet. And after you do that 2 times, you're going to feel that you're really, really relaxed, because all of the stress has been melted away because you've become aware of where you're holding all of it.
Okay. Great. I think as you were going through these, what jumped out to me more so was developing or placing space in your day to do one or more of these exercises. If you know that stress and anxiety is part of what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, then don't wait till you get to that moment to start feeling it, but add these into maybe a portion of your day and really carving out time. I think one of the biggest benefits to managing stress is carving out time for you, carving out time for you to get into that safe place. I can count many times where I had stressful days at work, and on those really stressful days, I would come in and I would take a bubble bath, and I needed that space. We do have a question. It says, what about the relationship with food? It was a joke at first, but Corona is real and something I find that I do to fill time versus being hungry. So I think it's stress eating and uh, that association.
Wait, I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
I think it's stress eating, which a lot of people and finding themselves using
Mhm.
food as an outlet, as well as in replace of food as a substance for living.
Yes. During this time, stress eating definitely is going to try to ramp itself up. I found myself almost attempting to engage in that, and I had to stop. So, what happens with the food is that when we eat, we're happy, and we're happy because when we eat something that tastes good, we do get a release of endorphins because it's something that tastes good, it's pleasurable, so we get that release of endorphins from our brain, and so that gives us what we need. But what happens is because it's a small release of endorphins, it subsides very quickly to where we engage in even more eating, and this is how we continue in this cycle of stress eating. So with the stress eating, one, it's a matter of becoming aware of it. If you are aware that you are a stress eater, that's the number one step because a lot of people are not aware of that. So once you become aware of that, it's a matter of identifying a healthier way, again, to cope with it. So this is where you can even do something, another technique, you can do journaling. Identifying what it is that you're anxious about when you realize that this anxiety was beginning to onset and write about that. And then as far as the eating, if you know that when you're stress eating, you're going to run to a bag of greasy potato chips, maybe switch that with something. Go grab a piece of fruit. Go grab something healthy that you can nibble on because maybe you just need something to chew for that moment, but make sure that it's something that's going to be healthier, that's actually going to give you some benefits as opposed to you eat it 5 minutes later, you're hungry again, and before you know it, you've eaten a whole party-sized bag of chips.
Yeah, and I would also say that one of the things that has helped me out is Phil Rashada said hello. One of the things that I would say that helps me out is plan your meals and plan your snacks. So one of the things is if you go ahead, it's all right. I mean, part of it is that it's okay to do things that you typically would not do in this season. That's just part of management. But if you know that's a challenge for you, go ahead and plan yourself. So, for example, if you know you want to pig out on chips, get you small, break the chips up and say, okay, every 2 hours, I'm going to have something else to eat. And so maybe it's going to be a small bag of chips for that 2 hours. Once you get into working, you'll start working, and 3 or 4 hours would have passed before you actually eat. But as my doctor says, all it takes is one bite to take care of a craving. So if you could just I mean, it's all right to have it, but the overindulgence and eating just for the sake of eating. And then also to get you some snacks that are what we call free snacks in the world of people that's trying to really watch their weight. Nuts, um, celery, those type of things. If you just feel like you have to chew on something, then find those type of things that have a smaller impact and be detrimental to your weight and all those other things. We're at our time, so I don't want. If you have to go, feel free. But I'm gonna hold it up the space for a few more minutes. If anyone else have any questions.
I was also going to say about the food thing, and I've learned this from going to several dietitian sessions lately, that the best thing is just not to buy it. Just leave it in the store. Don't even buy it because the temptation, the stress, and the anxiety will lead you straight to it no matter what. So they just suggest don't buy it. And as has been mentioned, just buy other things. Now, we typically don't eat them, so we're not prone to go and buy them. So you have to consciously create a new habit that forces yourself, in which after you do it for a while and habits are forming, then you will automatically lose the taste for those things that you once binged on. and you'll start liking the things that you thought you didn't like.
Thank you, Stacey. That's very valid. One of the things I do want is be comfortable with taking the pressure off yourself. Even the people that's not dealing with stress, they're going to have moments of it. And even this weekend was my birthday. I had a moment and I had to snap out of it. One is recognizing when those moments come, and then putting something in place. And if you have a day or a moment where it affects you, it's okay. If you have a moment where you say, I don't want to do anything, I just want to lay in bed, it's okay. It's all right. As long as that moment don't turn into a daily habit and slip into depression or something bigger. Just really being self-aware and reaching out to people, reaching out to your friends. I told you I was going to give a couple of things that you could do. Zoom meetings, which, as you can see, my friends connect to that, and we do it twice a week. This is our connection. As well as family, using this opportunity to connect with people that you typically don't. Every day, I have a two people that I contact. One is a family and one is a friend. And these are people that I haven't spoken to. And this allows me to have connections as well as build relationships and so forth. And just check on people, welfare checks. So those are little things to keep those connections going and so forth. And just, again, this is, as has been stated, these are unprecedented times. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Being cognizant and aware is the biggest thing. And then using those strategies. If Taylor is all right with it, I will post that PowerPoint so that you can see some of the techniques and use some of those. And this will be posted as well on my platform that I will be sharing. So, are there any other questions? Accountability partner is good too. Thank you, Stacey. Good. Well, Taylor, I want to thank you. Any last words before we go?
I hope that this was beneficial. I hope that it gave you some good content and there's something that everybody can use on this PowerPoint to be able to just kind of assist you during this time. Like you said, this is an unprecedented time, and I just want to make sure that everybody is staying physically healthy, but of course, mentally healthy as well.